Hi, I'm Maddie Macmillan, here with CNN Carbo News Network. Recently, some of our best reporters have researched what it's like on the home front throughout the American Civil War. They have worked hard to document the living conditions for those who stay home during the war. The North and South have different experiences during the Civil War concerning women, children, and the draft. Stay tuned and we'll be right back after this break. I'm Uncle Sam and I'm here to present to you with reasons why you should join the Union Army. Reason number 1, we have good wages. Reason number 2, anyone can join even if you're an immigrant or black. Reason number 3, you will help preserve the Union. And that's why you should join the Union Army today. Welcome back. Let's go to Chief Women's Correspondent Emma Justo. What is the extent of the women's role in the Civil War?
Well, Maddie, women are very active when it comes to supporting the soldiers. Women in both the North and the South make clothes and flags, fundraise, and organize hospitals for the wounded. As you can see here, Soldiers' Aid Societies have sprung up all across the country, which organize efforts to send food and other necessities to soldiers. Women also work as nurses in the hospitals on the home front. The United States Sanitary Commission was developed from the Women's Central Relief Association of New York City on April 29, 1861. It was signed into legislation by President Lincoln in June of 1861 and allowed women to train as nurses and work for sick and wounded soldiers. Clara Barton is one of the most accomplished nurses in the war so far. Before the war in the North, women mostly worked in textile, clothing, and shoemaking industries. Now they have taken over many other jobs, including civil work and agriculture. Women's presence in manufacturing has gone from 1/4 to 1/3. In the South, the women have been forced to take over the plantations and farms in the men's absence. They also began working as government clerks and school teachers. Some women in both the North and the South work as spies on the opposite side's home front. Women make particularly good spies because men are distracted by their attractiveness. Now let's go back to Maddie at CNN headquarters.
Thanks, Emma. It sounds like women have a really important role in the Civil War. Now let's go to Chief Children's Correspondent Allison Hutchinson in Massachusetts.
Thanks, Maddie. I'm here in Massachusetts investigating what life is really like here for children. Life has changed greatly in both parts of the country since the start of the war, but here in the North, children hardly ever see the hardships of frontier fighting. I saw a few boys playing in the street, pretending to stab one another. I stopped to ask them what they were doing, and they said they were playing soldier. It seems in the North, the children from wealthy families know about the war, but it seems to them like an exciting adventure that their fathers embark on. The children of lower class families are more directly affected by the war. It is not uncommon to see older children taking care of their younger siblings because their mother had to go to work at a factory in the absence of their father. Overall, here in the North, children are minimally affected by the Civil War and have managed to retain some aspects of a carefree, lively childhood. Last week, I investigated the life of children on the southern home front. Immediately, I was struck by how many shortages were plaguing the southern states. Children are walking around without shoes. Even in the cold winter months, they do not have adequate winter wools to keep them warm. The children here have quickly adapted to the hardships brought on by the Civil War. I talked to a child one day who on his birthday said, "It's okay that I don't have a birthday cake because I had supper tonight." Children and adults alike are suffering from malnourishment. Many children here have to work in factories just to survive. Here, it is common to see orphans trying to find money by picking lint to pack the wounds of soldiers. It is pretty obvious to me the differences in lives of the children between the North and the South. Back to you, Maddie.
Thanks, Allison. That's fascinating. After this short message from our sponsors, we'll be right back. Don't be a... Join the Confederate Army today! Now, let's hand it over to Bren.
Thank you, Maddie. The draft is in the North and the South, and they are different in both areas. The Union and Confederacy are using recruiting as a means of arms. Men get paid $300 to $600 for fighting. But instead of fighting, they collect the money, leave the unit before fighting, and move to another area under a different name, and continue to cheat the system. After hearing of this fact, the Union's General Ulysses S. Grant said only 1/8 of the combat soldiers are being effective anyway. The draft and the enlistment process aren't always accepted by the people. The North and South have different reactions and forms of resistance. When the war first began, many people volunteered, and at times the armies had too many people, so they were turned away. This eagerness was from the fact that they thought the war was going to be short. Once they realized how much longer it was going to be, fewer people volunteered and some dropped out. In response, the Confederacy has passed the conscription acts. The first one extends the 1-year contract to 3 years, and the second act expands the age range from 18 to 35 to 18 to 45. In the Union, the enrollment acts require that each state provide 300,000 soldiers no matter the method. This also expands the age range to 20 to 45. There are also the exemption clauses that allow the affluent population to hire a replacement. In the North, there is the 20 Negro Law that exempts any person with 20 or more slaves. The first riot was in New York in 1863. Many were killed, and this sparked some other riots around the country. The North has an advantage because they have many enlisted immigrants and blacks. In the end, the draft is effective but controversial. Back to you, Maddie.
Thanks, Bryn. That's very interesting. Now let's go to the expert on the Northern Home Front, Kenza Araba.
Thanks, Maddie. Men and women of the Northern Home Front support the war effort by making sure the economy remains healthy. Prices are on the rise, which makes workers unable to buy as much for their money. Coal and iron production have reached high levels, and merchant ship tonnage has peaked. Traffic on the railroads and the Erie Canal has risen by over 50%. Manufacturers that have gained huge profits often spend their money on lavish houses, silk clothing, and jewelry. Some are outraged by this because it is seen as immoral behavior in a time of war. While companies are making record profits, workers' salaries are shrinking due to inflation, and the prices of products have increased. Some are going on strike, but they rarely receive higher wages for their efforts. Here are some workers who are going on strike advocating for higher wages, and they won't work until they get what they want.
Higher wages, higher
Pay
wages.
us more! Pay us more!
Politics-wise, the Democrats are divided. Most support the war for the sake of preserving the Union, but some want to negotiate peace organizations and use propaganda to make their views more widely known. Ow. Back to you, Maddie.
Now let's go to Kenza's clone on the Southern Home Front, Mesa Araba.
Thanks, Maddie. When the war began, many Southerners thought it would be a short ordeal and that the Confederacy would be victorious, so they welcomed it because they wanted justice for their cause. It soon became apparent that this was not the case, but many Southerners have managed to keep their faith, especially the planters. The majority of the Southern population is experiencing many shortages thanks to the Northern blockade of supplies that are not produced there, such as food and wool. In response to these shortages, food riots have been occurring in larger cities such as Atlanta and Richmond.
Hey! Give that back! That's my family's rations for the week! No! Come back My family's gonna starve!
Another change on the home front is taking place on slave plantations. An increased number of slaves are refusing to follow orders and are running away. Some whites don't understand this change in their slaves because they have yet to consider that their slaves may want a different outcome in the war. In other news, Confederate bills have reached an all-time low at the meager value of 1.6 cents. This is thanks to major inflation, which is approaching a total of 9,000%, and many Southerners are struggling to purchase the extremely overpriced commodities that they need to survive. Now back to you, Maddie.
That's all we have for this afternoon's newscast on the home front of the American Civil War. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
Brought to you by
Brian's Bays!